In the stillness of ancient skies, a name was whispered again and again. Athena, goddess of wisdom, of vision, of quiet strength that bends but never breaks. Her story is not carved in battlefields or in broken swords. It is written in olive branches, in stone cities, in voices that choose reason over rage. When mortals stood at crossroads, she was the calm thought before the storm. When doubt clouded their sight, she gave the light of clarity. She was the echo that reminded leaders to listen, and the silence that birthed understanding. Athena's victories were never measured in wounds or war cries. They were victories of mind, of spirit, of wisdom carried like a torch. From the shadowed hours of night, her owl soared with steady wings. From the heart of Athens, her gift grew into harvests and into hope. This is not a tale of conquest. It is a journey into 12 moments where Athena's wisdom shaped destiny. A journey of endless victory, one that does not end with her nor with time. It begins again each time a mind chooses clarity. It continues wherever wisdom finds a voice. The city of Athens was young once, with stone walls rising under a sun that promised more than survival. People gathered at the edge of the Acropolis, their voices filled with hope and uncertainty. They longed for a sign, a gift, something that would define their spirit and guide their future. From the heavens, Athena descended. Her presence felt not in thunder, but in quiet resolve. She carried no blade, no spear raised for conquest, only the weight of wisdom and foresight. In her hand, she bore a small branch, delicate and unassuming, yet alive with eternal promise. It was the olive tree, a gift unlike any other, rooted in peace and endurance. She spoke not in commands, but in whispers that touched the hearts of every soul present. "This tree will grow," she said, "and it will give you oil, fruit, and light in darkness." The people listened, their eyes fixed on the slender branch, unsure of the depth of its meaning. She told them it would shade their children, heal their wounds, and feed their weary hands. It was not power forged in battle, but strength woven through patience, time, and harmony. The branch was planted in sacred earth, where roots reached deep and branches stretched to the sky. Seasons turned, and soon the first olives ripened, their taste both bitter and rich with promise. Families pressed them into oil, flames burning bright in the dark nights of the city. Merchants carried them across seas, weaving Athens into the fabric of distant lands. The olive tree became more than sustenance. It became a symbol of endurance and renewal. Athena's gift whispered of prosperity that did not depend on swords or fleeting victories. It taught the people that true wealth was not in taking, but in cultivating and giving. Children grew beneath its shade, their laughter mixing with the rustle of leaves in the wind. Philosophers walked among the groves, speaking of reason, justice, and the pursuit of truth. Artists carved its branches into shapes that told stories of peace and resilience. Sailors carried olive oil on their voyages, a light against storms and uncertainty. Even kings bowed to its quiet wisdom, knowing that no crown could outlast its roots. For every fruit it bore, it reminded Athens that strength is patient, not hurried. For every branch it stretched, it declared that growth begins with stillness and care. And so Athens thrived, not as a city of conquest, but as a city of light and thought. The olive tree stood as a promise, a bridge between mortals and the wisdom of a goddess. It was more than wood and leaf. It was a living story, endlessly unfolding with each season. Generations came and went, yet the tree endured, silent but eternal in its lesson. It taught them that wisdom blossoms slowly, and victory that lasts is never rushed. The people began to see their lives reflected in the patience of its growth. Every new branch told them that peace requires tending, just as the tree requires care. Every olive harvested told them that prosperity is born of harmony with the earth. In the cool evenings, elders spoke of Athena's gift as if it were a sacred hymn. They reminded the young that the true triumph of a people is not in wars won. It is in the olive that feeds, the flame that lights, the shade that shelters. Thus began the first of Athena's endless victories, a triumph written not in blood, but in growth. The olive tree was her answer to fear, her promise to Athens, her whisper of unbroken peace. And as its branches reached for the sky, so too did the spirit of the city rise. In the quiet chambers of the gods, Athena sat before her loom, the threads glimmering like starlight. Her fingers moved with care, weaving strands of gold, silver, and deep midnight blue into living patterns. Each thread was a thought, a choice, a memory, twisted together to form a story of the world. The loom was not of wood or iron, but of silence, patience, and vision beyond mortal measure. As she wove, the cloth revealed battles not fought with weapons, but with truth against illusion. The threads shimmered, showing mortals struggling to see beyond the masks of fear and pride. Athena leaned close, whispering wisdom into the tapestry, guiding them to clarity amidst confusion. In the weave, a king hesitated between greed and justice, his choice trembling like a fragile thread. She tightened the pattern, nudging his heart toward fairness, and the cloth glowed with balance. Elsewhere, a poet stared into the darkness of despair, his words trapped in silence. Athena wove a golden strand into his path, and suddenly his verses found their voice. The loom was her gift of sight, a way to untangle shadows that clouded mortal minds. Every knot unraveled was a small victory, unseen yet shaping the destiny of many lives. The tapestry told stories not of glory, but of insight, of hearts seeing clearly at last. Mortals often mistook strength for noise, but Athena's loom taught that truth is quiet and enduring. The colors shifted, forming an image of Athens itself, streets alive with debate and learning. She wove in shades of olive green, reminding them of the gift that fed and united. She wove in silver, a symbol of reason cutting through the fog of ignorance. She wove in blue, the calm of the sea guiding sailors towards safe harbors of thought. Those who gazed upon her tapestry saw themselves reflected, though they did not understand why. They felt their burdens ease, their questions sharpen, their choices seem less clouded with doubt. For in her loom was the secret of clarity, the victory of mind over confusion. When the threads quivered, Athena stilled them with her steady hand, reminding them of balance. When the patterns threatened to fray, she rewove them, turning mistakes into lessons of strength. Thus her loom was more than art. It was wisdom given form, silent yet unbreakable. The gods themselves marveled at her craft, though few could grasp the depth of its meaning. Zeus saw it as beauty, Apollo as music, but Athena knew it was the breath of reason. Through this loom she guided leaders, artists, thinkers, and wanderers who sought truth in shadow. The fabric of their lives was shaped by threads they never knew she had spun. Mortals carried her wisdom without knowing, like a garment of unseen threads upon their shoulders. And in their choices, in their words, the victory of clarity revealed itself again and again. The loom of Athena stood not in temples alone, but in every heart willing to listen. It whispered that illusions may dazzle, but truth is the thread that endures all storms. It reminded them that every tangled knot could be unwoven with patience and understanding. Thus the loom became her second gift, her endless weaving of light against the dark. And as the tapestry grew, so too did the wisdom of the world, thread by shining thread. In the heart of Athens, the air often trembled with voices rising in passion and pride. Leaders gathered in stone halls, eager to speak, eager to prove, eager to be remembered. Words clashed like unseen weapons, faster and sharper than any sword forged by mortal hands. Yet within the storm of voices, wisdom could be lost, drowned by noise and impatience. Athena walked among them unseen, her steps silent, her gaze steady, her presence a calm tide. She did not command them to hush. She guided their hearts to pause and listen. The counsel of quiet minds was her unseen gift, born from silence more powerful than noise. One evening, as disputes rose high, she stood behind a young leader filled with fury. He longed to speak, to shout his truth, but Athena placed her hand upon his thought. The words slowed, the fire dimmed, and he waited instead to hear the voice of another. In that moment, he discovered strength not in speaking first, but in listening with patience. Around him, the hall shifted, arguments softened, the tension bent into understanding. Athena's presence was not thunderous. It was the stillness between words that carried weight. She whispered to them that wisdom is not the loudest voice, but the truest one. A decision born of silence, born of listening, can reshape the path of a city. The council learned that to hear before speaking was to build bridges, not walls. And so, night after night, she moved through the assemblies, unseen yet deeply felt. Whenever pride threatened to close ears, Athena opened them with the gift of patience. Whenever fear twisted truth, she untangled it by urging hearts to sit in quiet thought. The victory was subtle, a triumph without applause, yet stronger than any decree or sword. It was the triumph of understanding, the victory of listening over shouting, of reason over rage. Stories spread of debates that ended not in division, but in unexpected unity. Merchants, soldiers, and poets began to gather, finding peace in the rhythm of listening. Even children in the streets learned to pause, to wait for each other's words to finish. This was Athena's counsel, not of stone or law, but of minds made calm and clear. In the hush of those chambers, the city grew wiser, decisions rooted in collective thought. Athena's owl watched from high beams, eyes glowing, silent keeper of the quiet victory. For every moment a leader chose to listen, the city gained strength beyond measure. For every pause before speech, another knot of conflict loosened into threads of agreement. The people began to honor silence, not as weakness, but as the soil where wisdom grows. They learned that listening was not surrender, but the highest form of respect and power. And so, Athens shone brighter, not because of war, but because of words that healed. Athena's counsel was never written in stone, yet it lived in the hearts of her people. It became the unseen law of the city, guiding rulers, teachers, and dreamers alike. Every ear that listened became a vessel of her wisdom, every silence a sacred gift. The council did not end in that age, for its spirit lingers in every gathering. It calls upon us still, reminding us that peace begins when voices learn to hear. This was her third victory, the quiet triumph of the Council of Quiet Minds. A victory not shouted, but carried softly, echoing through ages like a gentle, endless song. Night fell gently over Athens, and the city's torches flickered like stars against the darkened stone. Merchants closed their stalls, children drifted to sleep, and silence folded the streets like a blanket. Yet even in silence, the world was never blind. For Athena's owl stirred in the shadows, its wings spread wide, gliding over rooftops with a grace both quiet and commanding. The owl was more than a bird. It was a keeper of vision, a lantern in darkness. Its eyes shone with clarity, able to pierce the veil of night and see truth hidden. Athena had given this companion to the city, not to frighten, but to guide and protect. While men stumbled in uncertainty, the owl moved with certainty, seeing what others could not. It perched upon the marble columns of the Parthenon, watching the city with patient stillness. Where shadows deepened, it did not turn away, but gazed into them until light returned. To the people, it became a symbol that even in dark times, wisdom still sees. Stories grew of its presence. Children claimed it carried messages from the goddess herself. Sailors prayed to its sharp eyes before setting out, trusting its guidance through uncertain seas. Poets wrote of its wings as the brush of insight against the canvas of night. And leaders saw in its gaze a reminder to seek truth beyond the veil of pride. The owl did not speak, yet its silence was louder than 1,000 shouted warnings. When danger approached unseen, its cry rang out, sharp and piercing, a call of awareness. But more often it remained quiet, teaching that watchfulness was itself a shield of safety. Athena walked unseen beside it, her wisdom reflected in the creature's unblinking golden eyes. Together they roamed the night, guardians of clarity in hours when vision was clouded. She wished the Athenians to know that vigilance was not fear, but the courage to see. For what is seen can be understood, and what is understood can be faced with calm. The owl taught the city that even in shadows, there is always a path of light. Its wings whispered over the Acropolis, carrying the reminder that truth never sleeps. Even when mortals rested, their goddess remained awake, her gaze wide as the sky. Thus the owl was not only hers, but theirs, a bond between the divine and the mortal. It perched above markets, temples, and harbors, silent but ever-present, a symbol of insight. Each night its flight was a victory, not over darkness itself, but over blindness of spirit. Its gift was awareness, the triumph of seeing the world as it is, not as feared. Athens thrived under its watch, for wisdom in the night became strength in the day. Farmers rose at dawn, knowing the night had been guarded by eyes that never closed. Children slept without fear, trusting that the goddess's owl kept the dark at bay. And philosophers, awake through the midnight hours, found inspiration in its steady gaze. They saw in it a reflection of their quest, to see what lies hidden, to seek truth. Thus Athena's fourth victory was written in silence, wings, and golden eyes that never wavered. The owl in the night was her promise that clarity belongs not only to the day. It was her reminder that wisdom is the true torch, shining brightest when shadows fall. And as long as the owl soared, Athens would never walk blind, even in deepest night. In the temple of Athena stood her shield, not raised in battle, but resting in quiet, strength. It was called the Aegis, polished to a mirror's gleam, reflecting all who dared to look. Warriors approached it with awe, expecting visions of terror, but finding instead the truth of themselves. The shield was not a weapon to strike, but a guide to reveal what lay within. Athena had crafted it, so mortals could confront their own fears without disguise or shadow. Those who stood before it saw not monsters, but the hidden doubts behind their eyes. A soldier once trembled at its sight, for he saw not an enemy, but his own pride. Athena's voice came softly, reminding him that courage begins not in conquest, but in honesty. Another gazed upon the shield and wept, for she saw her anger burning brighter than her love. Athena's wisdom touched her heart, showing her that strength is gentlest when guided by compassion. The shield revealed truths that words alone could never reach, cutting deeper than any blade. It showed that the greatest battle is always within, fought in silence and in shadows. But Athena did not leave mortals in despair. She offered the strength to face themselves. For every reflection was not a curse, but a chance to choose clarity over confusion. The people began to understand that the shield was a gift, not a burden of fear. They learned that to see oneself clearly was to walk lighter, freer, closer to wisdom. Leaders sought its reflection before speaking, weighing pride against humility in its silent counsel. Poets saw in it their doubts, and from those doubts wove verses honest and eternal. Mothers saw their worries reflected, and from them found patience to nurture with steady hearts. Even children dared to peek, laughing at the simple truth of their innocence shining back. The shield became a mirror of the city itself, reminding Athens of its virtues and flaws. When the people grew arrogant, it showed them the weight of their hubris. When the people feared too deeply, it showed them their hidden reserves of strength. Thus, it was never an object of war, but of wisdom, shaping destiny quietly. Athena herself would gaze into it, her eyes meeting the reflection of her endless purpose. She smiled, for she knew that truth, though sharp, is the beginning of all victories. The shield taught Athens that to know oneself is the first step to guide others. It whispered silently that no battle is greater than the one fought within the soul. And in that truth, the city grew stronger, not through conquest, but through self-awareness. Travelers who left Athens spoke of the shield, saying it carried no fear, only clarity. Other lands marveled at the tales, wondering how a mirror could change a city's fate. But Athena's people knew. The reflection was not magic, but the wisdom to see plainly. The shield gave them courage to meet the world without illusions, only with steady hearts. It gave them the strength to stand in truth, even when truth felt heavy to bear. And so it became her fifth victory, the triumph of self-knowledge over fear and denial. For every reflection was a reminder that wisdom begins in honesty and grows in light. The shield of reflection remained in her temple, waiting for each seeker who dared to look. And as long as its surface shone, Athens would remember that the truest strength lies within. In the heart of Athens stood the olive tree, rooted deep in the stone of the Acropolis. It was no ordinary tree, but a gift from Athena, a promise of life that endures beyond storms. Its trunk rose strong and steady, its leaves silver in the light, whispering wisdom to the wind. Long before temples and statues, the tree was her first blessing, her first victory for the city. She had chosen to give not a weapon, but a source of nourishment and peace. Where Poseidon had struck the rock with salt water, Athena planted roots that would outlast time. The people gathered around it, touched its bark, and felt the stillness of her spirit within. Farmers found hope in its fruit, for olives fed the hungry and gave strength to weary hands. From its oil came light, burning steady in lamps through long nights of thought and study. Sailors carried jars of oil, trusting Athena's gift to guard them through uncertain seas. Mothers anointed children with its blessing, a quiet prayer for health and protection. The olive tree was not a monument to conquest, but a symbol of wisdom's enduring grace. It reminded the Athenians that true power is not in force, but in what sustains life. Each harvest became more than survival. It was a ritual of gratitude to the goddess. As fruit ripened, the people celebrated, singing beneath the branches of their divine tree. Poets wrote of its roots as deep as truth, and its branches as wide as hope. Philosophers saw in it a lesson that wisdom, like the tree, must grow slowly but steadily. Leaders learned patience beneath its shade, reminded that governance requires roots, not just wings. Even children felt its gift, playing among fallen leaves, their laughter echoing in its silence. And still, storms came, winds howled, and time pressed heavily upon the ancient tree. But each time, it stood firm, bending without breaking, offering fruit again when skies cleared. Athena's victory was not that the tree never fell, but that it always grew again. Its resilience became the city's own, teaching Athenians to endure with grace and wisdom. When enemies threatened their walls, they remembered the tree, standing strong in storm and sun. When famine loomed, they turned to its branches, finding strength in what it quietly offered. The olive tree was more than wood and leaves. It was Athens' spirit made flesh and root. Travelers from distant lands marveled at its age, its life stretching through centuries of change. They carried tales of it home, of a city blessed not by conquest, but by peace. The tree became a living scripture, its every leaf a verse of Athena's enduring gift. No army could tear it down, for its roots belonged to the earth, its branches to the sky. It grew as Athens grew, a witness to the city's trials, triumphs, and endless becoming. Athena watched over it, unseen yet present, her wisdom pulsing in its quiet resilience. She knew her gift had been more than food or oil. It was the wisdom of life itself. And so the olive tree stood as her sixth victory, not of might, but of endurance. It was a triumph that whispered, "To nourish is greater than to conquer. To grow is to win." And as long as its roots held firm, Athens would remember the goddess who gave them life. High upon the Acropolis, sunlight touched the marble steps of the Parthenon, glowing like fire on stone. The temple was not built in haste, but with patience, every block laid as if touched by prayer. Athenians did not raise it for war or conquest, but to honor wisdom as their guiding light. Each column stood tall, a forest of stone, reminding the city that truth must have strong pillars. Inside, the air was cool, carrying the scent of oil lamps burning steadily in golden bowls. Statues lined the hall, but none greater than Athena's image, serene yet unshakable in presence. Her eyes seemed alive, carved to hold both gentleness and power in eternal balance. The people entered with reverence, speaking softly, for wisdom asks for silence before it speaks. The Parthenon became not only a house of worship, but a treasury of hope and memory. Offerings filled its chambers, olive oil, crafted shields, scrolls of poetry, and tokens of gratitude. Mothers prayed for children's safety, farmers for fair harvests, leaders for clarity of judgment. And Athena answered not with thunder, but with the quiet turning of human hearts. Her temple was more than stone, it was a mirror of the city's devotion to wisdom. Philosophers gathered on its steps, debating ideas under the gaze of her marble form. They saw in her temple the proof that truth requires structure, patience, and shared effort. Poets wrote verses comparing the Parthenon to a lantern, shining over Athens in both day and night. Travelers from distant lands arrived, marveling at its harmony, asking what power had shaped it. The Athenians answered proudly. It was not power of conquest, but of vision, born of Athena. The temple reminded them daily that knowledge, like stone, endures longer than fleeting victories. When storms raged, lightning struck, or wars threatened, the Parthenon remained, steady as the earth. It taught them that true worship was not fear of the gods, but living by their wisdom. Athena did not demand sacrifices of pain, only the offering of thoughtful, just action. In her temple, even the poorest could kneel beside the richest, equals under her gaze. This equality became part of Athens' strength, for wisdom belongs to all, not to the few. The Parthenon stood as a teacher, wordless yet powerful, shaping the city through its silent grandeur. Its steps became a meeting place where ideas could be born and shared without fear. Children played in its shadow, growing up under the watchful spirit of their goddess. Artists studied its proportions, learning that beauty comes from balance, not from excess. Leaders walked its halls before making decisions, seeking calm strength from Athena's enduring presence. Even when the city faced hardship, the temple's columns whispered of stability and resilience. They reminded Athens that wisdom is a foundation stronger than any wall or army. Every stone of the Parthenon was a victory, each block a testament to Athena's endless gift. Her seventh triumph was not in battlefields, but in architecture that outlived centuries of change. The Parthenon declared that beauty, wisdom, and devotion can be one and the same. It spoke silently across generations, telling them that wisdom, once honored, becomes eternal. And so it stood, the crown of Athens, the home of a goddess, the heart of a city. Athena's spirit lingered there, not in shadow or in storm, but in light and stillness. And as long as the Parthenon remained, so too would her victory, endless and unbroken. At dawn, the Agora of Athens came alive with voices, footsteps, and the hum of human exchange. Stalls lined the square, filled with olives, pottery, scrolls, and fabrics dyed in brilliant colors. But more than goods were traded here. The Agora was the heart of thought and conversation. Men and women gathered not just to buy, but to share, to question, to shape ideas. Athena's presence lingered in this place, for she cherished reasons spoken aloud in the open air. The marketplace was her living temple, where wisdom moved from voice to voice, heart to heart. Merchants haggled, children played, and travelers told tales of distant lands and hidden wonders. Yet in the midst of noise, philosophers carved out space for dialogue, guided by Athena's spirit. They asked not what could be sold, but what could be known, what truth lay beneath the surface. Socrates walked barefoot among them, questioning, drawing out wisdom through his endless inquiries. He spoke of virtue, of justice, of the examined life that Athena herself embodied. Others gathered in circles, debating the nature of courage, love, and the soul's eternal journey. The Agora became a school without walls, a library without books, a university of living minds. Here the goddess's gift was not fruit or stone, but the courage to think aloud together. The people learned that wisdom was not locked away in temples, but lived in dialogue. Athena's victory in the Agora was the triumph of speech over silence, of reason over fear. No sword could guard a city so well as minds sharpened by questioning and reflection. Even merchants paused to listen, even children leaned close, catching fragments of philosophy in play. Travelers returned home carrying not only goods, but ideas planted like seeds within them. And those seeds grew, spreading beyond Athens, carried on tongues and in scrolls across seas. Athena smiled upon this marketplace, for she saw wisdom moving as freely as the wind. It was not bound to priests or kings, but shared among all who dared to ask. In the Agora, every voice mattered. Every question opened a new path toward clarity. Even disagreement was sacred, for it sharpened truth, making it clearer, brighter, more enduring. The Athenians came to see that democracy itself was born in these open exchanges. Here, beneath the gaze of their goddess, they practiced the art of listening and reasoning. The Agora taught them that freedom is not chaos, but dialogue guided by respect and thought. Leaders learned humility here, reminded that no one mind holds all wisdom, only fragments. Artists found inspiration in debates, painting and carving truths revealed in passing words. Poets wove questions into verse, carrying philosophy into rhythm and song for the people. And common citizens felt empowered, for they knew their voices too shaped the city's wisdom. The Agora became a living reflection of Athena's endless victory, not in silence, but in speech. It showed that wisdom thrives not in isolation, but in community, shared and tested openly. Even when storms scattered the crowd, they returned, knowing dialogue was their greatest safeguard. When wars threatened, it was not weapons, but ideas forged in the Agora that endured. The square itself became immortal, not in stone, but in the echoes of countless conversations. Athena's eighth triumph was not a single voice, but the chorus of many seeking truth together. It was the victory of dialogue over tyranny, the triumph of thought over blind obedience. And as long as voices rose in the marketplace, her wisdom would walk among mortals. The Agora was her reminder that wisdom is never still. It grows wherever questions are spoken. In the quiet hours of night, the Parthenon stood glowing beneath a sky filled with silent stars. Its marble columns shimmered like frozen music, echoing the harmony Athena had sown in her city. The temple was more than stone. It was a vessel carrying dreams, hopes, and the wisdom of Athens. Each pillar rose like a prayer, not for conquest, but for balance between mortals and the divine. Inside, the air was still, yet heavy with presence, as though Athena herself lingered in every shadow. The sculptors had carved not only forms, but ideals, giving stone the breath of thought and purpose. Friezes told stories of gods and men, of struggles and triumphs where wisdom guided strength. The Parthenon was not only a monument, but a mirror of the Athenian soul, steady and enduring. Travelers climbed the Acropolis from far-off lands, marveling at the temple's beauty and grace. They carried its image back with them, spreading whispers of Athens' glory across distant seas. But Athena's victory was not in admiration alone. It was in what the temple inspired within hearts. Each visitor felt the quiet lesson. Greatness rests not in wealth, but in harmony and wisdom. The Parthenon taught that beauty is truth carved in stone, shining brighter than gold or conquest. It stood as a reminder that art is not luxury, but the foundation of a city's spirit. The goddess's triumph was endless, because her wisdom was woven into marble and memory alike. Even as winds wore down stone and centuries passed, the essence of Athena remained within it. For the temple was never only for her, it was for the people who dared to dream higher. It gave citizens a sense of belonging, a bond stronger than walls or armies could provide. Families pointed upward and told their children, "There stands the gift of our goddess, our guide." Poets found verses there, sculptors found inspiration, philosophers found symbols in its balanced form. Even in silence, the Parthenon spoke, reminding all that wisdom is the truest form of power. It became the city's compass, always pointing back to the values Athena had entrusted to them. Through festivals, hymns, and offerings, Athenians renewed their covenant with the goddess of wisdom. They knew the temple was not a cage for the divine, but a beacon for mortal striving. Each dawn, as light spilled over its steps, it seemed to awaken hope across the entire city. No matter the storms, the wars, or the passing of empires, it stood firm as a guardian. Its endurance itself was a form of victory, one that no hand could erase completely. Athena's wisdom flowed through its stones, out into streets, homes, and hearts of generations. And so, the Parthenon was not merely built, it was alive, pulsing with the memory of thought. It carried within it the rhythm of prayers, the echoes of laughter, the whispers of debate. 1,000 lives touched its steps, and in return, it gave them courage to live with clarity. Athena's 9th triumph was this: to show that wisdom can be carved into eternity's face, that beauty, truth, and thought, when joined, become stronger than time, stronger than kings. The Parthenon was the living proof that victory is not fleeting, but endless, if rooted in wisdom. And even as night returned, the temple glowed like a lantern, guiding the city through ages. Athena's presence was eternal here, not as a statue of gold, but as light upon stone. Her endless victory was written in marble, sung in silence, and carried in every heart below. The sea surrounding Athens shimmered like a mirror, carrying both trade and tales to distant shores. Ships sailed in and out of Piraeus, their sails swollen with winds guided by unseen divine hands. Merchants brought spices, grains, and fabrics, but more precious than goods were the ideas exchanged. Athena's wisdom flowed not only in stone and speech, but across the restless tides of the sea. Each ship was like a messenger, bearing fragments of Athens' soul to lands far beyond Greece. Travelers carried home stories of democracy, philosophy, and art, sowing seeds of wisdom abroad. For Athena knew that victory was not only to keep, but to share generously with the world. The harbor bustled with voices in many tongues, weaving a tapestry of cultures in one place. It was here that Athens learned the balance between receiving and giving, between trade and thought. Athena's gift was to make the city not an island, but a bridge between worlds and minds. Sailors prayed to her before journeys, asking not for wealth, but for safe passage and clarity. The sea became another classroom, teaching Athenians to see beyond their borders and embrace others. For every voyage was a chance to grow, to discover, to bring back more than material riches. The harbor thus became a living extension of the Agora, where a dialogue crossed oceans. Each returning ship carried not only goods, but songs, stories, and philosophies to enrich the city. Athena's 10th triumph was her ability to transform exchange into wisdom, trade into dialogue. She showed that victory was not in hoarding, but in circulation, in letting wisdom travel. The Athenians realized that to give knowledge was to multiply it, not diminish it. And so they became guardians not only of their city, but of ideas moving across waters. The sea gave them humility, reminding them they were part of a world wider than their own. It whispered that wisdom grows stronger when shared, like fire spreading light without losing flame. Even storms could not stop this exchange, for ships returned, battered yet carrying wisdom still. Athena's presence was felt in the rhythm of waves, in sails filled with purposeful wind. She reminded them that every port reached was another step in her endless victory. Through the sea, Athens became immortal, its wisdom outliving empires that would later rise and fall. The sailors themselves became storytellers, carrying Athens in their hearts to faraway lands. Children in distant places heard of a goddess of wisdom who guided ships to safe shores. Artists painted her image, scholars debated her lessons, leaders pondered her vision of harmony. The sea was her silent ally, scattering her gifts wider than stone or temple could hold. Thus, Athens learned that wisdom cannot be confined. It is like water, flowing, adapting, enduring. Athena's victory spread not by conquest, but by the gentle persistence of shared thought. The waves themselves became her voice, carrying fragments of truth to every listening shore. Her triumph was not in one city alone, but in the connections woven across the world. And so, the harbor at Piraeus stood as more than a port. It was a gateway to eternity. Each departing ship was a chapter, each arrival a new lesson, in the living book of wisdom. Athena's endless victory was etched not only in marble, but in the horizon itself. The sea glistened with her reflection, a reminder that wisdom, like the tide, never ceases. Her gift was not bound to Athens alone, but offered freely to all who dared to sail. And as long as ships carried thought across waters, Athena's triumph would endure forever. As centuries passed, Athens changed, yet the whispers of Athena never left its stones and streets. Empires rose and fell, but her spirit endured, flowing quietly like a river beneath time's surface. Her wisdom lived not only in temples or scrolls, but in the way people dreamed and spoke. Every question asked, every dialogue shared, was a continuation of her endless triumph over silence. The goddess did not need thrones or armies, for her victories were carved in thought itself. She lived in the Agora's debates, the Parthenon stones, and the sails that crossed distant seas. Her gift was never meant for one city alone, but for every heart open to wisdom's call. And so, even as centuries carried Athens through shadows, her light burned steady, untouchable. Philosophers, artists, and teachers carried her torch, shaping worlds that never forgot her lessons. Her voice echoed in the words of poets, in laws that cherished justice, in art that sought harmony. Wherever truth was spoken, Athena walked. Wherever reason was defended, she smiled unseen. Her victories were endless because they belonged to all, not bound to marble or to empire. The true temple of Athena was not the Parthenon, but the human spirit striving for clarity. Her wisdom was a seed planted in every age, waiting for courage to make it bloom again. Even in modern times, when ruins stand weathered, her voice is not lost, but louder still. For the world continues to ask, to seek, to question, and so her presence lingers eternal. Children learn of her stories, not as myth alone, but as guidance for lives yet to unfold. Her triumph is visible in classrooms, in courts of justice, in every place where minds are free. Athena taught that true victory is not won once, but renewed with every act of thought. It is endless because wisdom never dies. It is reborn whenever truth is sought sincerely. And so the story of Athena is not only Athens' past, but humanity's ongoing journey. Each generation holds her gift in their hands, a lamp to light the path of tomorrow. The ruins remind us not of loss, but of endurance, of wisdom that outlasts stone and empire. Athena's presence is not in statues of gold, but in the courage to seek what is right. Every act of justice, every honest question, every search for beauty is her eternal temple. The goddess of wisdom is not distant. She is as close as the thoughts within our minds. Her endless victory is not ancient. It is alive, here, in every heart that dares to think. And as long as questions rise, as long as truth matters, Athena will walk among us still. Her triumph endures not in the noise of conquest, but in the quiet strength of reason. The tale of Athena teaches us that wisdom is not fragile, but the strongest force of all. It binds generations, crosses seas, and shines in places where no empire could ever reach. The true gift of the goddess was never marble or olive tree, but the courage to reflect. And so, the story closes not with an ending, but with an opening into tomorrow's light. For Athena's endless victory is not behind us. It is ahead, always waiting to be lived.